part, let's continue talking about the social self, but this time let's talk about some mechanisms for self-enhancement. It's really kind of interesting. There are lots of ways in which self-esteem can take a hit. So how is it that people cope with these threats to self-esteem? How is it that they're able to maintain a positive sense of self-worth? There's some pretty interesting mental gymnastics. Let's talk about several. For example, the better-than-average effect discusses the fact that people in general think pretty highly of themselves. And one way they do that is by overestimating their abilities and overestimating their positive traits. So relative to other people, they see themselves as better than average. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, this type of research. In this type of research, people are asked to describe themselves and maybe check off on a list different personality attributes that describe them. So someone might say like, well, I'm honest, I'm intelligent, I'm kind, I'm responsible. Then that's compared with how they see the majority of other people. And when you compare their own self-ratings to how they see the majority of other people, they are seeing themselves as better than average. So of course, that's going to lead to a bump in their self-esteem. They're going to see themselves as somewhat superior, and that's going to make them feel good. Implicit egotism. That's really pretty interesting as well. It's pretty subtle, and from the best we can see, it's essentially unconscious. It's not something that you're really knowing that you're engaging in. And what's going on here is that you're enhancing your sense of self-worth by having a preference for things that remind you of yourself. So what reminds you of yourself more than anything other than your name? And what's kind of interesting is that we tend to like things that tend to be associated with our names. Now, my name is Frank M. Losciavo, and I always sign all my emails and everything FML. And I've been doing that ever since I was probably in third grade or so. And that's probably because so many people in my family are named Frank, but I'm the only Frank M. Losciavo, and I've always just really embraced that. Well, that might explain why I'm interested in living in Franklin County, or why I have a wife named Felicia. You can see where I'm going with this. Or why we decided to buy a house on First Street. Now, in reality, none of those things is true. I do not live in Franklin County. I do not have a wife named Felicia, and I do not live on First Street. But when you crunch the numbers, people who have names that begin with Frank, for example, are more likely to have preferences for people, places, and things that remind them of that name. So it's a very subtle effect. We're just trying to talk about some mechanisms that enhance people's self-esteem. And doing things to remind yourself of yourself, that will enhance your self-esteem. Self-serving biases are really pretty interesting as well. We do a variety of things that are self-serving. They are geared toward us and making us feel good. So for example, sometimes our memories are biased. I think we talked about this in a previous section. So if I'm asking people to recall their grades in high school, for example, or some college courses that you took a while back, people are more likely to inflate the grades that they actually received. So we have self-serving memories. People also take credit for successes, and when they have failures, they tend to blame others. We call that just a general self-serving bias. And people tend to think overly optimistically about the future. Like, what's your chance of getting a good job once you graduate? Or what's the probability that you're going to have a long, happy marriage? People tend to overestimate the probability that's going to happen. We call that an optimistic bias. Well, these are self-serving beliefs. They're beliefs that are going to make you feel pretty positive, and they're going to enhance your sense of self-worth. That's what we're talking about, mechanisms that enhance your sense of self-worth. Self-handicapping is really very interesting as well. Bottom line is, we all make excuses for our failures. You've probably said at some point after receiving a poor grade that, I didn't really study for that test. Well, that's an excuse, right? You're not saying, I'm stupid, that's why I failed that test. That's an internal attribution. You're saying like, well, I didn't study. So by blaming the situation, you're able to maintain that positive image that you are intelligent. You're intelligent, you just didn't study. Well, that's kind of the basis for what I'm talking about here. Sometimes we set very low expectations. Like, let's say I'm going to go bowling, and I haven't done that in a while, and see, I'm nervous. And I'm thinking, if I bowl really poorly, I'm going to look bad. I'm going to look bad in other people's eyes, and I'm going to look bad in my own eyes. So I might do something to set the situation to already provide a convenient excuse. I might say, I haven't bowled in a long time, so I'm probably not going to do well. So people are already expecting me not to do very well. Now, if I don't do well, well, I told you I wasn't going to do well. But if I do well, then I look even better. So self-handicapping is related to this. Let's say that you've got an exam coming up and you don't study for that exam. And in fact, you don't simply blow off the exam, but you party really hardy the night before. So look at this guy right here. Let's say he's got an exam coming up tomorrow, and he is drinking, and he is doing drugs, and he is just partying like you wouldn't believe. The one thing he is certainly not doing is preparing for that exam. Well, that's another element here of self-handicapping that's really important. People will sometimes actually sabotage their future performance, because now they have an excuse for why they didn't perform well. Now remember, people are most likely to do this when they're somewhat unsure about their abilities. Maybe this guy is thinking, I don't understand statistics really well. I'm kind of confused when they're talking about it in class. Well, I'm going to party the night before, and that's going to be a convenient excuse for why I don't do well on that exam. So that's what self-handicapping is all about. We're essentially setting up a situation where the odds are against us. We're relatively likely to fail, but there's this really convenient excuse for why we failed. It doesn't blame us and our intelligence. We're able to still maintain a relatively decent level of self-esteem, and other people are able to explain our failures in terms of our actions, in this case, the night before. We call this BIRGing, basking in reflected glory. I'm assuming you're from Ohio. So let's say I were to just yell out OH, you'd probably yell back IO. And that's the basis for BIRGing. The bottom line is, if you're from Ohio, even if you go to Ohio University, you probably still love Ohio State. I know I love Ohio State. And I love Ohio State not because they have a strong psychology department, and they do have a strong psychology department. I love Ohio State because of Ohio State football. And by being a resident of Ohio, I have a piece of that, and I can hold on to that. And the bottom line is they do well. In fact, the AP looked back at all their polls over the years, and they have ranked them as the greatest football program in college ever. And I love that, and I embrace that, and I tell people about that. Why? I mean, it seems kind of strange. Why would I do that? Because I bask in their reflected glory. They do well, and because I'm associated with them, I'm a fan, I feel good. I do well. So it's kind of interesting. We are able to latch on to other people, other things, other organizations, other causes. And if those things are positive, we're able to see ourselves as positive. Finally, let's talk about one more mechanism for maintaining self-esteem, and that would be downward social comparisons. We can compare ourselves to all kinds of people, right? I can compare myself to people who are doing wonderfully. Well, I can also compare myself to people who are not doing so wonderfully. That's what a downward social comparison is. So if I'm not feeling very good, I might want to compare myself to people who are less successful than I am, people who are in a situation right now where they're less happy. And in comparison, that might make me feel a little bit better. This comic does a pretty good job of describing that. You see this guy having a hard time with his computer. This is so frustrating. I'm so bad with computers. And she notices what's going on. And then she says, well, this is kind of embarrassing for me, but it might help you. Last week, I deleted my thesis because I don't get Dropbox. In other words, she doesn't know how to save her files in the cloud. And he's like, that makes me feel better. Because he's doing a downward social comparison. He's thinking computers are frustrating, but geez, I didn't lose my entire thesis because I don't know how to save a file. And she's thinking like, well, actually it makes me feel worse. Because remember, he's doing a downward social comparison, but he didn't make the mistake she did. She's doing an upward social comparison. So that comparison helped him boost his self-esteem. Her comparison hurt her self-esteem. So one thing you're noticing is we go through lots of mental gymnastics to keep our self-esteem high. Let's talk about that in a little bit more detail. The bottom line is sometimes we have these positive illusions about what's really going on, positive illusions about ourselves. And those mental gymnastics do indeed help us keep our self-esteem high. But the question I have is that healthy? Because in general, when we're talking about someone's mental health, you'd think that people want to have an accurate self-view. So is it healthy to engage in these mental games to help maintain our sense of self-esteem? And the bottom line answer is yes. In general, people who do this, they tend to be happier. They tend to be better adjusted. So those who embrace these positive illusions, they tend to be better off. But keep this in mind. There are some big buts that go along with that. I think I mentioned before that people who have inflated self-esteem, they tend to be some nasty people sometimes. Sometimes they're caring so much about themselves, they're not caring as much about other people. Another thing is that people with high self-esteem get so caught up in that high self-esteem that they often don't know how to deal with setbacks and failures. So that's not a positive aspect of this. Here's another thing. We talked about the kid who partied the night before his test to sabotage his test performance because that provided a handy excuse for why he didn't do well. We didn't need to necessarily blame him and his intelligence and his inability to learn statistics. We just blamed the fact that he was out partying. Well, drunken self-handicapping is obviously not a good long-term strategy. So if people are engaging in these positive illusions over and over again in maladaptive ways, that's obviously not going to be a good thing. And then finally, we mentioned that the basis for mental health is really based on accurate self-assessments. And accurate self-assessments often help us understand where we are having some problems and where we can do better. And that then leads us, we are then motivated to improve ourselves. So those are just some of the caveats there. This is kind of interesting too. Depressed people who have low self-esteem, they actually tend to see themselves more realistically. So if they're not engaging in this positive, illusory gameplay, they actually have a more realistic view of themselves. The phrase in psychology is that they are sadder but wiser. So that is kind of a sad situation that they're being more realistic, which seems like a positive thing, but they pay the price. They're somewhat depressed and their self-esteem takes a hit. So sometimes you know what I mean. All right, well, that's it for this section, but stay tuned because there's more social psychology coming up soon.